On a distant planet called Scifistories, life was hard but simple for the Deathworlders. They were a strong and resourceful species, known for their ability to survive in even the harshest conditions. The planet itself was a strange mix of beauty and danger, with towering mountains, deep forests, and rivers that glowed faintly at night. But beneath its surface lay something valuable, rare minerals that humans from Earth desperately wanted. For years, humans had come to Scifistories to mine these resources. They built colonies, brought machines, and dug deep into the ground without thinking much about the consequences. Among the colonists was Daniel Harper, an engineer who worked tirelessly to keep the mining equipment running. He wasn't a bad man, but he often followed orders without questioning them. Over time, though, he began to notice things that made him uncomfortable. The humans rarely showed respect to the Deathworlders, treating them like they were less important just because they looked different. Alina Rivers was another human who lived on Scifistories, but her role was very different from Daniel's. She was a linguist, someone trained to learn and understand new languages. Her job was to communicate with the Deathworlders, helping the colony leaders understand what they needed or wanted. Alina didn't see the Deathworlders as enemies. She saw them as people trying to protect their home. One of her closest contacts among them was Kale, a tall and imposing figure who carried himself with quiet authority. Kale wasn't quick to trust, but over time, he grew to appreciate Alina's honesty and kindness. Despite Alina's efforts, tensions between the humans and the Deathworlders were growing. The Deathworlders had warned the humans repeatedly about the dangers of digging too deep into the planet's core. The heart of Scifistories is alive, Kale had told Alina once. If you keep taking from it, it will fight back. But the colony leaders dismissed these warnings as superstition. To them, the Deathworlders were primitive beings who didn't understand technology or progress. Daniel noticed how frustrated the Deathworlders seemed whenever they tried to talk to the humans. Sometimes, he would catch glimpses of their faces when they spoke to the colony leaders, faces filled with anger, sadness, and resignation. It reminded him of how his own father used to look when dealing with unfair bosses at work. Still, Daniel stayed quiet, convincing himself that it wasn't his place to interfere. One evening, while walking back to his quarters after a long day, Daniel overheard a conversation between two other engineers. "Why do we even bother talking to them?" one of them said, referring to the Deathworlders. "They're just animals. All they care about is keeping us away from their precious rocks. They could be dangerous if we push them too far," the other replied cautiously. "Dangerous? Please, look at them. They're barely smarter than the wildlife here. We have guns, don't we? Let them try something." Daniel frowned as he listened. He didn't agree with what they were saying, but he also didn't say anything to stop them. Instead, he walked away, feeling uneasy. That night, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, he thought about the Deathworlders and wondered if maybe they weren't so different from humans after all. Both groups were just trying to survive, weren't they? Meanwhile, Alina sat by a small fire outside her tent, sharing a meal with Kale. The flames cast flickering shadows on their faces as they talked quietly. "You know we're running out of time," Kale said finally, breaking the silence. His voice was calm but heavy with meaning. "I know," Alina replied softly, "but I don't know how to make them listen." Kale sighed deeply. "Then perhaps it's time we stopped asking." Alina looked at him sharply, sensing the weight behind his words. For the first time, she realized that patience might not be enough anymore. Something had to change, and soon, or the fragile peace between the humans and the Deathworlders would break completely. The next morning, the colony was buzzing with activity as usual. Miners prepared to head into the tunnels, engineers checked their equipment, and supply trucks rumbled through the dirt roads. But beneath the surface, trouble was brewing. Deep within one of the largest mines, a loud rumble echoed through the tunnels. At first, no one paid much attention. Small tremors were common on Scifistories. But this time, the shaking grew stronger, and soon rocks began falling from the ceiling. Daniel Harper was inside the mine when it happened. He had been fixing a broken drill when he heard the noise. At first, he thought it was just another malfunction, but then the ground beneath his feet shifted violently. Everyone out. Someone shouted, and panic spread quickly. Workers scrambled toward the exits, but before they could reach safety, part of the tunnel collapsed, trapping dozens of miners inside. Above ground, chaos erupted as news of the disaster spread. Rescue teams rushed to the scene, while others worked frantically to clear debris and stabilize the area. Alina Rivers arrived shortly after, helping coordinate efforts to save the trapped workers. Her heart sank when she realized how serious the situation was. The collapse wasn't just an accident, it felt like a warning. As the hours passed, frustration among the colonists turned into anger. Many blamed the Deathworlders for not doing more to help. They knew this would happen. Jake Monroe, the head of security, growled during a meeting later that evening. Why didn't they warn us? They did warn us. Alina shot back, her voice firm despite the tension in the room. Kale and his people have been telling us for months that the mining is destabilizing the planet. We chose to ignore them. Jake glared at her. So you're saying this is our fault? That we deserve this? I'm saying we should have listened, Alina replied. Instead of accusing the Deathworlders, maybe we should focus on getting those people out alive. But Jake wasn't satisfied. Neither were many of the other colonists. Word spread quickly that the Deathworlders hadn't lifted a finger to assist with the rescue operation, fueling resentment even further. By the end of the day, rumors were flying that the collapse hadn't been an accident at all, that the Deathworlders had sabotaged the mine on purpose. Daniel found himself caught in the middle of the growing hostility. Some of his coworkers accused him of being too sympathetic to the Deathworlders because he hadn't joined in blaming them outright. Others whispered that maybe the Deathworlders were right to fight back. Daniel didn't know what to think. He wanted to believe the best about both sides, but the evidence seemed stacked against everyone. That night, Elena went to meet Kale near the edge of the forest. She found him standing alone, staring up at the stars. His expression was unreadable, but there was a heaviness in his posture that worried her. Was this your plan? She asked bluntly, unable to hide her frustration. To let them suffer. Kale turned to face her, his eyes dark and unwavering. No, he said simply, but I won't apologize for refusing to risk my people's lives to save yours. You ignored every warning we gave you. Now you reap what you've sown. Alina felt a lump rise in her throat. Not all of us ignored you, she said softly. Some of us tried to listen. And now innocent people are trapped underground because of decisions made by people who don't care about anyone but themselves. Cal's gaze softened slightly, but his tone remained firm. Then perhaps it's time your people learned to take responsibility for their actions. We've given enough, Alina. Too much. If you want to survive here, you'll need to change. Alina left the conversation feeling unsettled. She understood Cal's perspective, but she also knew that most of the colonists wouldn't see it that way. To them, the Deathworlders' refusal to help proved they were enemies. As she walked back to the colony, she couldn't shake the feeling that things were about to get much worse. By morning, tensions had reached a breaking point. Angry shouts filled the air as colonists gathered outside the main building, demanding answers. Jake Monroe stood at the front of the crowd, his face red with rage. Enough is enough, he declared. If the Deathworlders want war, they'll get it. Alina watched from a distance, her heart pounding. She knew this moment marked the beginning of something dangerous, a conflict that neither side might be ready for. The anger in the colony grew thicker with each passing hour. Jake Monroe's fiery speech had ignited a spark among the colonists, and soon a group of them began organizing a response. Armed with makeshift weapons and fueled by fear and frustration, they marched toward a nearby Deathworlder settlement. Daniel Harper watched from the sidelines, his stomach twisting with unease. He wanted to step in, to say something that might calm the crowd, but he didn't know where to start. Alina Rivers was already on her way to the settlement when she heard about the attack. Her heart raced as she hurried through the forest, hoping to reach Kale before the mob did. She knew how dangerous this situation could become if violence broke out. The Deathworlders weren't defenseless. They were strong, resourceful, and deeply protective of their homes. If provoked, they wouldn't hesitate to fight back. When Alina arrived at the settlement, she found chaos unfolding. The colonists had surrounded the area, shouting insults and throwing rocks. Some had set fire to wooden structures, sending thick plumes of smoke into the air. The Deathworlders stood their ground, their faces grim but calm. They didn't retaliate, at least not yet. Alina spotted Cal near the center of the commotion, his posture tense but controlled. She pushed her way through the crowd, ignoring the angry glares directed at her. "What are you doing?" she demanded, stepping between Cal and Jake, who was leading the charge. "This isn't going to solve anything." Jake sneered at her. "Stay out of this, Alina. You're too soft on them. They've been lying to us, sabotaging our work. We're just teaching them a lesson." "They didn't sabotage anything," Alina shot back. "You saw what happened in the mine. It was an accident caused by years of reckless digging. They warned us, Jake. We didn't listen." Cale stepped forward, his voice low but sharp. "She's right. This is your fault, not ours. But if you want a fight, we'll give you one. Don't think for a moment that you're stronger than us." For a moment, it seemed like the tension might explode into violence. The colonists tightened their grips on their weapons, while the Deathworlders shifted into defensive stances. Alina felt trapped in the middle, her mind racing for a way to defuse the situation. Finally, she turned to Jake, pleading, "Please, just walk away. If you keep this up, people will get hurt on both sides." Reluctantly, Jake signaled for his group to retreat, though not without glaring at Cal one last time. As the colonists dispersed, Alina let out a shaky breath. She turned to Cale, expecting gratitude or relief, but instead she saw anger and disappointment. "Why do you keep protecting them?" Cale asked, his voice tinged with bitterness. "After everything they've done, why do you still stand with them?" "I'm not standing with them," Alina replied quietly. "I'm trying to stop this from getting worse. Violence won't fix anything, Cale. It'll only make things harder for everyone." Cale shook his head. "Maybe, but patience has gotten us nowhere. How many more warnings do we need to give before they understand? My people are tired of being treated like animals, Alina. We've given, and all we've received in return is greed and disrespect." Alina didn't have an answer. She knew he was right, but she also believed there was still hope for peace, if only both sides were willing to try. As she walked back to the colony, her thoughts swirled with uncertainty. She couldn't shake the image of the burning structures or the look of betrayal in Cal's eyes. Back at the colony, tempers remained high. Jake Monroe was hailed as a hero by some for standing up to the Deathworlders, while others whispered that his actions had gone too far. Daniel Harper sat alone in his quarters, replaying the events of the day in his mind. He hadn't joined the attack, but he hadn't stopped it either. Guilt weighed heavily on him, and he wondered if he'd made the wrong choice by staying silent. Maya Torres, the colony medic, found Daniel later that evening. She had treated several injured colonists after the confrontation, and her expression was grim. "We can't keep going like this," she said, sitting down across from him. "Something has to change, or we're all going to end up paying the price." Daniel nodded slowly. "I know. But what can we do? Most people here don't seem to care about finding a solution. They just want someone to blame." Mia hesitated, then leaned closer. "What if we start looking for answers ourselves? There's got to be a reason why the Deathworlders are so desperate to protect their planet. Maybe if we figure that out, we can find a way to fix this mess." Her words stayed with Daniel long after she'd left. For the first time, he felt a flicker of determination. If no one else was willing to take the first step toward understanding, maybe he and Mia could. But as he stared out the window at the darkening sky, he couldn't ignore the gnawing fear that it might already be too late. The next morning, Daniel Harper and Mia Torres decided to act on their plan. They knew they couldn't trust the colony leaders to investigate further, so they decided to look for answers themselves. Their first step was to visit the Deathworlders again, hoping to speak with Kale or someone else who might share more about why the planet was so important to them. Elena Rivers joined them reluctantly. After the attack on the settlement, she wasn't sure how welcoming the Deathworlders would be. Still, she felt responsible for bridging the gap between the two groups, even if it seemed impossible now. Together, the three of them made their way to a quieter part of the forest where the Deathworlders often gathered. When they arrived, they found Kale waiting for them. His expression was guarded, but he didn't turn them away. "What do you want now?" he asked, his tone sharp but not hostile. "We need to understand," Daniel said quickly, stepping forward. "Why is the mining such a big threat? We've heard your warnings, but we don't fully understand what's at stake." Kale studied him for a moment, then sighed deeply. He motioned for them to follow him deeper into the forest. They'd walked in silence until they reached a clearing where a large, jagged rock formation stood. The ground around it pulsed faintly, glowing with an eerie blue light. "This is the heart of Scifistories," Kale explained, pointing to the glowing area. "It's alive, in a way you wouldn't understand. Everything on this planet depends on it. The air, the water, the soil. When you dig too deep, you disrupt its balance. That's why we've been warning you. If the core collapses, the entire planet will die." Elena stared at the glowing ground, her mind racing. She had always known the Deathworlders were protective of their home, but she hadn't realized just how interconnected everything was. "How long do we have?" she asked softly. Kale shook his head. "Not long. Maybe a few months, maybe less. Every explosion, every tunnel you carve, it pushes us closer to the edge." Mia frowned, glancing at Daniel. "If this is true, why hasn't anyone told us before? Why keep it a secret?" "It's not a secret," Kale replied bitterly. "We've tried to explain, but your people don't listen. They only care about taking what they want." Back at the colony, Daniel and Mia pored over old reports and data from the mining operations. They discovered something shocking. Earth's corporate leaders had known about the risks all along. Buried in classified files were warnings from geologists and environmental experts detailing the dangers of overmining Scifistories. But instead of halting the project, the corporations had covered it up, prioritizing profit over safety. "This is unbelievable," Mia muttered, shaking her head as she read through the documents. "They've been lying to us this whole time." Daniel clenched his fists, anger bubbling inside him. "No wonder the Deathworlders are done trusting us. We're pawns in their game, just like everyone else." Word of their discovery began to spread among the colonists. Some were horrified, while others refused to believe it. Jake Monroe dismissed the findings as lies, accusing Daniel and Mia of siding with the enemy. "You think showing us some papers is going to change anything?" he snapped during a heated argument. "The Deathworlders are still a threat, no matter what you say." But not everyone agreed with Jake. A small group of colonists started questioning the colony's mission, wondering if staying on Scifistories was worth the cost. Among them was Sarah Blake, a teacher who had grown increasingly uneasy about the treatment of the Deathworlders. "If what they're saying is true, then we're no better than thieves," she said during a quiet meeting with Daniel and Mia. "We can't keep living like this." As tensions rose within the colony, Elena continued visiting Kale, trying to rebuild the fragile trust that had been broken. One evening, as they sat by a fire, she shared the news about the hidden documents. "I think some of my people are starting to understand," she said cautiously, "but it's not enough. Too many still see you as the enemy." Kale nodded slowly, staring into the flames. "Then maybe it's time we stopped waiting for them to change. Maybe it's time we take back what's ours." His words sent a chill down Elena's spine. She could see the determination in his eyes, and she knew there was no turning back now. Whatever happened next, it would change everything, for better or worse. The colony was split in two. On one side were those who still believed the Deathworlders were dangerous and needed to be controlled, no matter the cost. Jake Monroe led this group, his anger burning hotter with each passing day. He argued that the humans had every right to stay on Scytherus, and that the Deathworlders were just trying to scare them into leaving. If we back down now, they'll think they've won, he told anyone who would listen. We can't let them push us around. On the other side were Daniel Harper, Mia Torres, and a growing number of colonists who had started questioning their mission. They shared the classified documents with as many people as they could, hoping to expose the truth about Earth's corporate greed. But convincing others wasn't easy. Many colonists didn't want to believe that their leaders had lied to them. Some even accused Daniel and Mia of betraying humanity by taking the Deathworlders' side. Elena Rivers found herself caught between the two groups. She spent her days trying to mediate, urging both sides to find common ground. But the more she tried, the clearer it became that compromise wouldn't come easily. The colonists were too divided, their fears and frustrations too deep. Even Cale seemed less willing to negotiate. When Elena visited him, she noticed a change in his demeanor. His patience, once endless, was wearing thin. "You're running out of time," Cale told her during one of their meetings. "My people are ready to act. If your colony doesn't leave soon, we'll make sure you do." "Cale, please," Elena pleaded. "There are still people here who want to help. Give us a chance to fix this." Cale shook his head. "You've had chances, Elena. Too many. My people are done waiting." Back at the colony, tensions reached a boiling point. Jake Monroe called for an emergency meeting, demanding action against the Deathworlders. "They've made their intentions clear," he said, pacing back and forth in front of the gathered crowd. "They don't want peace. They want war. And if they think they can scare us off our own planet, they're wrong." Daniel stood up, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "This isn't our planet, Jake. It belongs to the Deathworlders. We're the ones who came here uninvited, remember? If we don't start listening to them, none of us will survive." Jake glared at him. "Survive? You really think rolling over and letting them boss us around is going to save us? No. The only way to survive is to show them we're not afraid to fight back." The room erupted into shouts, some agreeing with Jake, others siding with Daniel. In the chaos, Maya stepped forward, holding up a hand for silence. "Fighting isn't the answer," she said firmly. "Look at what's happening already. People are getting hurt. And for what? So we can keep digging holes in the ground. Is that really worth it?" Her words quieted the room, but only for a moment. Jake pointed a finger at her. "You're just like him," he spat, gesturing toward Daniel. "You'd rather side with them than protect your own kind." Miva crossed her arms, refusing to back down. "I'm trying to protect everyone, Jake. That includes the Deathworlders. If we don't work together, there won't be anything left to protect." As the argument dragged on, Sarah Blake spoke up. "Maybe we should vote," she suggested. "Let everyone decide what we do next. Stay and fight, or try to find another solution." The idea was met with mixed reactions, but eventually the colonists agreed. A vote was scheduled for the next morning, giving both sides one last chance to make their case. That night, Daniel and Mia worked tirelessly to rally support for their plan. Evacuate the mines and begin negotiations with the Deathworlders. They knew it was a long shot, but they also knew it was the only way to avoid disaster. Meanwhile, Jake and his followers prepared for a very different outcome. If the vote went against them, they weren't planning to give up without a fight. Armed with weapons and fueled by anger, they vowed to defend the colony and their claim to Scytherus at any cost. Elena spent the night alone, staring at the stars. She thought about Cal's warning and wondered how much longer she could keep trying to bridge the gap between the two groups. Deep down, she feared that neither side was truly ready to listen anymore. As dawn approached, she realized that the choices made in the coming hours would shape the future of Scytherus, and perhaps the lives of everyone on it. The morning of the vote arrived, and the atmosphere in the colony was tense. Colonists gathered in the main hall, their faces reflecting a mix of fear, anger, and uncertainty. Daniel Harper and Mia Torres stood at one end of the room, while Jake Monroe and his supporters took the other. The air felt heavy, as if the decision they were about to make would tip the scales one way or another. Daniel spoke first, his voice calm but firm. "We've been given a chance to do the right thing," he began. "The Deathworlders aren't our enemies. They're trying to protect their home. If we don't listen to them, we risk destroying this planet, and ourselves along with it. We need to stop mining, leave the core alone, and find a way to live here peacefully." Jake rolled his eyes and muttered something under his breath, but Daniel ignored him and continued. "This isn't just about us. It's about doing what's right. For everyone. If we keep acting like we own this place, we'll lose everything." When Daniel finished, Jake stepped forward, his expression hard and unyielding. "That's easy for you to say," he sneered. "You want us to roll over and let them take control. But I'm not giving up what's ours without a fight. We came here to build something, to survive. And if the Deathworlders can't see that, then maybe they're the ones who should leave." The room erupted into arguments, voices rising as people shouted over one another. Some agreed with Jake, saying they couldn't trust the Deathworlders. Others sided with Daniel, insisting that peace was the only way forward. Elena Rivers watched silently from the back, her heart sinking as she realized how divided the colony truly was. Finally, Sarah Blake called for quiet. "Let's vote," she said firmly. "Everyone gets one choice. Stay and fight, or try to negotiate with the Deathworlders." The voting process was quick but painful. Each person cast their vote by dropping a stone into one of two buckets, one marked with a symbol of peace, the other with a fist. When the last stone was dropped, Sarah counted the votes carefully. Her face gave nothing away as she announced the results. "It's almost even. 52% voted to negotiate. 48% want to stay and fight." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Daniel and Mia exchanged relieved glances, while Jake clenched his fists, visibly furious. "This isn't over," he growled, glaring at those who had voted against him. Later that day, Elena met with Kale to share the news. She explained the close vote and the colonists' decision to try negotiating. Kale listened quietly, his expression unreadable. When she finished, he nodded slowly. "It's a start," he said, "but actions matter more than words. Show me you mean it." Meanwhile, Jake refused to accept the outcome. That night, he gathered his followers and began planning their next move. They decided to disable the Deathworlders' communication systems, hoping to weaken their ability to coordinate. Under the cover of darkness, they crept into the forest, armed with tools and weapons. Daniel and Mia discovered the sabotage attempt too late. By the time they reached the site, the damage had already been done. Sparks flew from broken equipment, and the faint hum of power lines had gone silent. "They're escalating," Maya said grimly, staring at the wreckage. "This isn't just about sending a message anymore. They're trying to provoke a war." Elena rushed to warn Kale, but when she arrived, she found the Deathworlders already prepared. Terran, a leader among a smaller faction of Deathworlders, approached her. Unlike Kale, Terran believed cooperation with some humans might still be possible. "We know what they've done," Terran said, "but we also know not all of you are like them. Help us stop this before it goes too far." Together, Elena, Daniel, and Mia worked with Terran to repair the damaged equipment. They knew it wouldn't fix everything, but it was a step toward proving that not all humans were enemies. As they worked, Daniel couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance to avoid disaster. But in the distance, the glow of torches signaled Jake and his group returning. Their intentions were clear, and the fragile peace teetered on the edge of collapse. The torches grew brighter as Jake Monroe and his followers approached, their faces shadowed by determination and anger. They had come back, not just to finish the sabotage, but to send a message, one that would leave no room for negotiation. Daniel Harper and Mia Torres stood with Terran and a small group of Deathworlders near the damaged equipment, their hearts pounding as they realized what was about to happen. "Get out of the way," Jake demanded, stepping forward with a crowbar in hand. His voice was sharp, leaving no room for argument. "This isn't your fight. It is our fight," Daniel shot back, his voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside him. "You're making things worse, Jake. If you destroy this, there's no going back." Jake smirked, glancing at his group for support. "Oh, I think we passed going back a long time ago. You want to side with them? Fine, but don't expect us to sit around while you hand everything over." Terran stepped forward, her posture calm but firm. She was smaller than many of the humans, yet her presence commanded attention. "We don't want war," she said, her voice clear and measured. "But we will defend ourselves if we have to." Jake laughed bitterly. "Defend yourselves? Against what? A bunch of scared colonists. Please, you're not as tough as you think." Before anyone could respond, one of Jake's followers lunged forward, swinging a metal pipe toward a Deathworlder. The attack ignited chaos. Shouts filled the air as both sides clashed, fists flying and weapons colliding. Daniel and Mia tried to intervene, shouting for everyone to stop, but their voices were drowned out by the noise of the struggle. Alina Rivers arrived just as the fight escalated. Her heart sank as she saw the scene unfold. The humans and Deathworlders locked in a violent confrontation that neither side seemed willing to end. She spotted Cal nearby, watching silently from the edge of the forest. His expression was unreadable, but Alina knew he wouldn't stay out of the fight for long. "Kale, please," she called out, running toward him. "Don't let this happen. We can still fix this." Kale looked at her, his eyes dark with frustration. "Fix it? How? Your people refuse to listen. They've made their choice." "They're not all like that," Alina pleaded. "Some of them are trying to help. Give them a chance." For a moment, Cal hesitated. Then, without a word, he moved toward the fray, his movements swift and deliberate. He didn't join the fight immediately, but instead positioned himself between the two groups, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "Enough," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Slowly, the fighting began to subside. Both humans and Deathworlders turned to look at him, breathing heavily and covered in dirt and sweat. Cal's gaze swept over the crowd, landing briefly on Jake before settling on Daniel and Mia. "If you truly want peace," he said, addressing the humans, "prove it. Stop attacking us and start listening." Jake scowled, unwilling to back down. "And if we don't?" Cal's expression hardened. "Then you'll learn the hard way what happens when you push us too far." The tension lingered, thick and suffocating, as both sides stared each other down. Finally, Daniel stepped forward, his voice trembling but resolute. "We need to stop this now. Fighting won't solve anything. Let's call a temporary truce, just until we figure out what to do next." To everyone's surprise, Jake reluctantly agreed. He wasn't happy about it, but even he could see that continuing the fight would only lead to more bloodshed. With the immediate threat diffused, Alina and Terran worked together to broker a fragile ceasefire. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to buy them some time. That night, Daniel and Mia sat outside the colony, exhausted but determined. They knew the truce wouldn't last forever, not unless they found a way to convince the rest of the colonists to change their ways. As they talked, Mia pulled out the classified documents they had uncovered earlier. "If we show these to everyone," she said, "maybe they'll finally understand why we need to leave the mines alone." Daniel nodded, hope flickering in his chest. "It's risky, but it might be our only chance." Unbeknownst to them, Cale watched from a distance, his thoughts swirling. He didn't trust the humans completely, but he couldn't deny that some of them, like Daniel, Mia, and Alina, were genuinely trying to help. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to consider the possibility that peace might still be within reach. But the road ahead would be difficult, and the cost of failure would be unimaginable. The next morning, Daniel Harper and Mia Torres gathered a small group of colonists who were willing to listen. They spread the classified documents across a table in the main hall, laying out the evidence of Earth's corporate greed and the warnings about Scytherus instability. The room was quiet at first, the weight of the information sinking in as each person read through the files. "This is unbelievable," Sarah Blake said finally, her voice trembling with anger. "They knew all along. They sent us here knowing it could destroy the planet. And us." Mia nodded grimly. "That's exactly what they did. Profit over people. That's how they've always operated." Daniel stepped forward, his tone urgent but calm. "We can't keep following their orders. If we don't stop mining now, we're not just risking our lives. We're risking the future of this planet and everyone on it. We have to evacuate the mines and find another way to survive." Some of the colonists looked convinced, nodding slowly as they processed the truth. Others, however, remained skeptical. "Even if this is true," one man argued, "what do you expect us to do? Just leave everything behind? Start over from scratch?" "We don't have a choice," Daniel replied firmly. "If we stay on this path, there won't be anything left to save. The Deathworlders are right. This planet can't take much more." As the discussion continued, Jake Monroe stormed into the room, his face red with fury. He had heard about the meeting and wasn't happy. "What is this?" he demanded, glaring at Daniel and Mia. "Trying to turn everyone against us. Against humanity." "It's not about turning anyone against anyone," Maya shot back. "It's about survival. Yours, mine, everyone's. If we don't change course, we're all going to die." Jake snorted. "You really think running away with your tails between your legs is going to fix anything? No, the only way to survive is to fight. For what's ours." His words sparked another argument, voices rising as tempers flared. But before things could escalate further, Alina Rivers stepped in, holding up a hand for silence. "Enough," she said sharply. "Fighting among ourselves isn't going to solve anything. We need to focus on what matters, finding a solution that works for everyone." Her words seemed to resonate with some of the colonists, enough to quiet the room. Taking advantage of the moment, Daniel turned to the group. "Here's what we propose. We seal off the mines completely and start working with the Deathworlders to find a new way to live here. It won't be easy, but it's the only way to avoid disaster." Kale, who had been observing from a distance, approached cautiously. His presence alone silenced any lingering objections. "This is your last chance," he said, his voice low but firm. "Leave the core alone, or face the consequences." Reluctantly, the majority of the colonists agreed to the plan. It wasn't unanimous. Jake and his followers still refused to cooperate. But it was enough to move forward. Over the next few days, teams worked tirelessly to evacuate the mines, dismantling equipment and sealing off tunnels to prevent further damage. The process was slow and grueling, but there was a sense of purpose that hadn't existed before. Meanwhile, Jake plotted his next move. He couldn't accept defeat, not when he believed so strongly in humanity's right to stay on Scytherus. Under the cover of night, he led his group back to the sealed mines, determined to reopen them. They brought tools and explosives, ready to break through the barriers no matter the cost. Daniel and Mia discovered the sabotage attempt too late. By the time they arrived, Jake and his followers had already set charges near one of the sealed entrances. "Stop!" Daniel shouted, running toward them. "Do you realize what you're doing? You're going to kill us all." Jake ignored him, lighting the fuse with a smirk. "If you're so scared, maybe you should have stayed out of this." Before the explosion could go off, Kale appeared, moving faster than anyone thought possible. With a single swift motion, he disarmed the charge, leaving Jake stunned. "This ends now," Kale said coldly, his eyes locked on Jake. "Your greed has gone far enough." For a moment, it seemed like Jake might lash out, but the sheer force of Cal's presence stopped him. Defeated and humiliated, he backed away, his followers scattering behind him. As dawn broke over Xitharis, the colony began preparing for evacuation. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the right one. For the first time in months, there was a glimmer of hope, a fragile but real chance for peace. The evacuation plan was in motion, but the tension between the humans and the Deathworlders remained thick. While most of the colonists worked to pack supplies and prepare for departure, Jake Monroe and his followers refused to leave quietly. They continued to sabotage efforts, sneaking around at night to tamper with equipment or spread fear among the others. Daniel Harper and Mia Torres stayed vigilant, knowing that one wrong move could unravel everything they had worked so hard to achieve. Together with Elena Rivers, they coordinated closely with Terran and a small group of Deathworlders who were willing to help. These Deathworlders, led by Terran, acted as guides, showing the humans safer routes away from the unstable mining zones and toward temporary shelters deeper in the forest. Despite their cooperation, trust was still fragile. Many humans whispered about how dangerous it was to rely on the Deathworlders, while some Deathworlders muttered that helping the humans only delayed the inevitable conflict. Kale kept his distance, watching silently as events unfolded. He didn't interfere directly, but his presence loomed large over everyone, a constant reminder of what was at stake. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the colony, Jake made his boldest move yet. Gathering his loyalists, he armed them with makeshift weapons and set out to attack the Deathworlders' main settlement. His goal wasn't just destruction, it was retaliation. If we hit them hard enough, he told his group, they'll back off. They'll see we're not weak. Elena overheard rumors of the planned attack and rushed to warn Kale. She found him standing near the glowing core of Xitharis, its faint blue light illuminating his face. Jake's coming, she said breathlessly. He's planning to attack your settlement tonight. Cal's expression darkened, but he didn't seem surprised. Let him come, he said simply. He'll learn soon enough that aggression won't win him anything. Elena shook her head, desperation creeping into her voice. Please, Kale, don't let this escalate. If there's violence now, everything we've worked for will fall apart. Kale studied her for a moment, then nodded slightly. Fine. But if I stop this, you must promise me something. No more delays. The mines stay closed, and your people leave without resistance. I promise, Elena said quickly, relief flooding through her. That night, as Jake and his group approached the Deathworlder settlement, they were met not with hostility but with silence. The area seemed deserted, which only fueled Jake's anger. Cowards, he shouted into the darkness. You think hiding will save you. Suddenly, figures emerged from the shadows. Deathworlders, led by Kale. Their movements were calm but deliberate, radiating strength and control. Jake raised his weapon, ready to strike, but Kale stepped forward alone, his hands open and empty. This is your last chance, Kale said, his voice low and commanding. Leave now, and no harm will come to you. Stay, and you'll regret it. Jake laughed bitterly, gripping his weapon tighter. You think you scare me? Go ahead, try something. Without hesitation, Kale moved faster than anyone thought possible. In one fluid motion, he disarmed Jake and pinned him to the ground, holding him firmly but not harming him. The other humans froze, unsure of what to do. Kale looked up at them, his gaze piercing. This could have ended peacefully, he said, but you chose violence. Remember that. Humiliated and defeated, Jake signaled for his group to retreat. As they slunk back toward the colony, Daniel and Mia arrived, having followed them to prevent disaster. Seeing Jake subdued brought a mix of relief and shame to Daniel's face. It's over, Jake, he said quietly. Let it go. Back at the colony, the failed attack marked a turning point. Even Jake's most loyal supporters began to question his leadership, realizing that further resistance would only lead to more pain. Slowly, reluctantly, they joined the evacuation efforts, packing up their belongings and preparing to leave the planet. As the days passed, the colony grew quieter. Equipment was dismantled, tents were folded, and supplies were loaded onto ships. Though the process was difficult, there was a sense of closure, a shared understanding that survival meant compromise. For the first time in months, hope began to replace fear. Cale watched from afar as the humans boarded their ships, his expression unreadable. When Alina approached him one final time, he simply nodded. "You did what you promised," he said. "Now it's up to you to keep your word." Alina nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you, Cale, for everything." As the ships lifted off, carrying the colonists away from Scytherus, the planet seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The scars would take time to heal, but for now, peace had been restored. As the human ships rose into the sky, leaving Scytherus behind, Daniel Harper and Mia Torres sat side by side near a window, watching the planet grow smaller and smaller. The glow of the core could still be seen faintly in the distance, a reminder of what they had almost lost, and what they had managed to save. Neither of them spoke for a long time, each lost in their thoughts. Mia broke the silence first. "Do you think we did the right thing?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with doubt. Daniel nodded slowly. "I do. It wasn't easy, but staying would've been worse. For everyone. Maybe now, Earth will listen to what we have to say." Mia sighed, leaning back in her seat. "I hope so. But even if they don't, at least we tried. At least we stood up for something bigger than ourselves." Their conversation was interrupted by Sarah Blake, who joined them with a small smile. "It's strange, isn't it? Leaving like this, I never thought I'd miss that place, but I guess it taught us something." "What's that?" Daniel asked. "That survival isn't just about taking," Sarah replied. "It's about balance, about giving back as much as you take." The ship continued its journey, carrying the colonists toward an uncertain future. Many of them felt conflicted, relieved to escape the dangers of Scytherus, but guilty about the damage they had caused. Jake Monroe kept to himself, sitting alone in a corner, his face unreadable. He hadn't spoken much since the failed attack, but his silence spoke volumes. Some whispered that he might face consequences when they returned to Earth, while others hoped he would use the time to reflect on his actions. Meanwhile, back on Scytherus, Cale stood atop a hill overlooking the abandoned colony. The land around him was scared but healing, the rivers flowing clearer and the air feeling lighter. Taryn approached him, her expression calm but thoughtful. "They're gone," she said simply. "What happens now?" Cale turned to her, his gaze steady. "Now, we rebuild. We heal the land and make sure nothing like this ever happens again." Taryn nodded, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of sadness. "Do you think they'll come back?" "Maybe," Cale admitted. "But if they do, they'll find us stronger and wiser. They won't catch us unprepared again." Alina Rivers chose not to leave with the others. She stayed behind, standing alongside Cale and Taryn as the last of the ships disappeared into the stars. Her decision wasn't made lightly, but she knew where she belonged now. "Thank you for letting me stay," she said quietly, looking at Cale. "You earned it," Cale replied, his tone softer than usual. "You fought for us when no one else would. That means something." In the days that followed, Alina worked closely with the Deathworlders, helping them repair what had been broken. Together, they planted new crops, cleaned up debris, and began restoring the natural balance of the planet. Though the process would take years, there was a sense of purpose in every action, a shared determination to protect their home. Far away aboard the colony ship, Daniel and Mia began compiling evidence of Earth's corporate greed, determined to expose the truth once they returned. They knew it wouldn't be easy. Powerful people would try to silence them, but they also knew they couldn't stay quiet, not after everything they had witnessed. As the ship drifted through space, Daniel looked out the window one last time, thinking about Scytherus. He wondered if the planet would forgive humanity someday, or if forgiveness even mattered. What mattered most, he realized, was learning from their mistakes. And maybe, just maybe, doing better next time. Back on Scytherus, the glowing core pulsed gently beneath the surface, a symbol of resilience and renewal. The planet had survived the worst humanity could throw at it, and now it was beginning to heal. For the first time in years, there was peace, but it was a fragile peace, one that required vigilance and respect. Kale stood under the stars, gazing at the sky. He didn't know what the future held, but he was ready to face it. Whatever challenges lay ahead, the Deathworlders would meet them together, with strength, unity, and hope.